Hi everyone, it's Koinzell here. So it's finally time for another math video. It's been some time since I last did one. I think the last one was Kazuha math video. So today we'll do a Yoimiya one. And I'll also be changing the way I do the math video slightly, in the sense that I don't want it to be another half hour kind of video. So I'm gonna split the video into logical, smaller videos, so that we don't, because anyway people wouldn't watch through the whole video, so I'll just do it into smaller bite-sized kind of small, okay, not exactly bite-sized but smaller type of videos, so that it's easier to digest the specific content that we're going to address. Okay, so first off, before, what you see on the screen is my standard kind of like the math template setup, where you have the character base stats, the weapon, then we permutate the character level, weapon level, and then the artifacts, what are the min stats, etc. And we have substats later on as well. But I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. But before we go further, there is one thing I want to talk about, which is the thundering pulse effect. Okay, for people to understand the stats, because there's three different type of stats. So the first one is when your normal attack deals damage, the stat lasts 5 seconds. The second one is when you cast your elemental skill, the stat will last 10 seconds. And then you have one last one where when your energy is less than 100%, you have the stack. So I don't understand why people are still not understanding this, but I'm going to make it very simple. If you can cast your burst, if you have enough energy to cast your burst, you do not have the stack. You will get the stack once you cast your burst. Okay? Very simple. So how does Yoimiya's kit work? If you look at Yoimiya's kit, the preview that I done previously, quite some time back, you know that she's designed to be a character where first you use an elemental skill or use the burst first, whichever comes first. Once the burst or the elemental skill is done, you switch to using the other. That is literally how she's designed, because if you look at her Ascension talent, you look at her Constellations, she is exactly meant to do that. In fact, it looks to me to be skill first, then burst. So how does this synergize well with the Shiminawa set? Because Shiminawa set, how it works is, when casting an elemental skill, if the character has 15 or more energy, you lose 15 energy, and the normal charge and plunging attack damage increased by 50% for 10 seconds. So obviously this is designed to work together with the Thundering Pulse. Even when you have almost full energy to burst, but you don't use your burst because, for example, the burst cooldown is not ready yet, you want to be using an elemental skill to do actual DPS, which is where Yoimiya's DPS is. You use it, it helps reduce your energy, and you just go ahead and use your auto attacks for 10 seconds. Now when you're using auto attacks for 10 seconds, assuming you were not at full energy, you need to get more than 50 energy. If you were at full energy when you first cast your elemental skill, Shiminawa minus makes you lose 15 energy, which means that within 10 seconds, which is the amount of time that the second stat here lasts. Okay, elemental skill. Okay, you know what? I initially thought I didn't need to move it, but fine. So the casting elemental skill stat lasts 10 seconds. Elemental skill of Yoimiya lasts 10 seconds as well. Okay, so very straightforward really. Just don't get 15 energy in 10 seconds, or rather get 15 energy only at the end of 10 seconds, towards the end of 10 seconds, which is very doable because you're using auto attacks, you're not using elemental skills. You only get energy from defeating opponents, or for bosses, you get energy when you bring them down to certain stages, or rather not bosses but elite mobs like Ruin Guards. Okay, so I actually think that Shiminawa together with Thundering Pulse effect will allow you to get the stack consistently. Okay, consistently. And on top of that, there's attack percentage provided by Thundering Pulse and crit damage. It has the same amount of crit damage as Staff of Homa. Just looking at this, you know that this is a good weapon. Okay, so stop bashing this weapon, because if you don't understand how the 3 stats work. It's meant to work together with Shiminawa. And unfortunately, For Shiminawa, it does seem like it's very tailor-made for Yoimiya together with this Thundering Pulse. Child can work as well, but it reduces the amount of time that Child is actually DPSing. It's 10 seconds instead of say 15 seconds when you're using the Heart of Death 4-piece set. So anyway, that is the very quick introduction. I just want to say that Yoimiya's kit should allow her to get these 3 stats consistently. Of course, once Yoimiya is out, then we have to test her out with different type of ER combinations. But I'll say for sure don't get ER on her if you're so afraid of maintaining the 3 stacks. Because anyway, her burst, while nice, decent, not say it's not fantastic, but it's decent, it's not a main part of her DPS. Okay? So that is it for the introduction, because I felt like I really needed to explain this before we go further. Otherwise, people don't understand it, then people are just gonna go like thinking that this weapon you can't maintain 3 stats, and actually thinking that Rust is better. Well, Rust is better in terms of the fact that you don't need to maintain 3 stacks, but Rust doesn't have this amount of crazy crit damage. Crit damage really makes a lot of difference. Right, so artifacts build wise, for this video, I'm just gonna talk about min stat sense, attack sense, elemental goblet, pyro goblet. Headpiece will just use crit damage. Why? Because her ascension stat is crit rate. In case I did not show that yet, yes, it's crit rate. At level 90, you have 24.2% crit rate. This includes the 5% base crit rate that every character starts with. Okay. So pretty standard stuff here. We are going for 60% CR and 240% crit damage. Yes, I know it's not 1:2 ratio, but I personally believe that 60 to 70 CR is enough. Even 50 is enough. It's more important to get more crit damage, in my opinion anyway, for realistic type of DPS. Attack here is assuming that very standard. If you see all of my math video, I always assume that you have about 10 rolls of attack percent in total, including the base roll, the base stat that the artifact comes with before you do any upgrades. So now to talk about this long list of portion here, so that I can explain to you guys. Basically, because of the way Yoimiya works, her C1 gives her 20% attack bonus. Her A4 gives her 20% attack. Her A1 gives her 20% pyro. Her C2 gives 25% pyro. So there's a lot of different type of attack modifier and damage source coming in. These are just all the different permutations so that we slowly build up, and I can finally show you guys how her damage will look like, her damage figure will look like. Okay. And the thing about Yoimiya is that she actually has a lot of damage percentage bonuses. Shiminawa gives 50%. Thundering Pulse R1 gives 40%, R5 gives 80%. And I think Rust is actually one of the best weapons for her, and Rust is 80% at R5 and 40% too at R1. So very close, or very similar. In fact, it's similar in terms of the normal attack, but like I said, I have to emphasize again, Rust does not have a crit damage subset. And Rust attack percent is sort of negated by Thundering Pulse attack percent as well, right? And the base attack, don't forget about that too. So in my video today, I'm not going to calculate the buffs from the teammates, but just want to show there are other characters that can even buff her damage even more. I mean, all this just comes from one character, Kazuha. If you have him set up as a full EM with R5 Freedom Sword and a 4-piece VV, it really adds a lot of damage. But for the purpose of the calculation today, I'm not going to include any buff from teammates. It's just solo, no reactions, no nothing, just her solo damage, so you can then look at, is it really bad? Because that's the whole point of this video, right? We want to address whether Yoimiya is really bad. She's getting bashed a lot from what I see on the internet, which I kinda don't understand why, because I don't think she's that bad, and we'll show it with figures. So first off, at level 9 normal attack, with your first attack, just the first attack itself, where you do 2 hits, 59.94% attack each hit, with crit and A1 bonus, 20% pyro against a 50% defense, mob, and 10% resist, which is like the standard type of reduction. 50% defense is when you hit a level 90 mob. 10% resist is pretty much always there for all type of enemies. At least 10% resist. So these are the different type of damage figures you see here, just the first hit. But bear in mind that this does not include her elemental skill yet, so the correct thing to look like is her elemental skill. Now the thing about her elemental skill is that I'm not sure whether or not it's a separate base damage modifier or it shares the same type of damage percentage over here with all of these damage sources. So I'm just putting it out as two different type of damage source. Okay. Now the thing about the Yoimiya, right? First, I already covered the first point I wanted to talk about, which is understanding. Sorry, let me just do this. Understanding Yoimiya's kick synergy with Shimenawa and Thundering Pulse. Let's talk about whether Yoimiya is really bad. And later on, I'll talk about the comparison against Hu Tao as well. I want to talk about the damage modifier, which is what we are talking about right now. So damage modifier, right? If it's a separate damage modifier, it's definitely going to do more damage. I mean, obviously, right? Because she has so many damage sources already, damage bonus sources. If it shares the same pool, it's going to be a very, very huge diminishing return. As you can see here. Let me just reduce this so that's clear to you guys. If the level 12 versus level 9 elemental skill only gives you a 2.60% damage boost. If I compare C2 and R1 TP, which is Thundering Pulse, versus the C2 and R1 TP at level 9 elemental skill, it can't be that bad, right? How can MiHoYo give you a 5-star with such terrible skilling? Which is why I'm inclined to think that it's an additional damage modifier. But nevertheless, I have done the permutation for both figures. So you have one, which is the level 9 elemental skill, how the damage look like on the very first attack, which is 2 hits. This is the damage dealt when you have the 2 hits added together. At C0 and R1 Thundering Pulse, you have 16k. Not too bad, considering how fast Yoimiya attacks. Then you have the level 12, which is very real territory because it's C3. Okay. And then you have the full attack cycle. Full attack cycle meaning all 5 hits without doing animation cancel or anything like that, because right now I don't think people have found the optimum animation cancel for her yet. So I don't want to include that yet. I'll just include a very simple one where I just calculate the full attack cycle. And based on what I see on the internet and what we have seen so far, her full attack cycle takes about 3 seconds. So in 3 seconds, with C0 and R1 Thundering Pulse, you can do 98k damage. And you see here, I also did a comparison. C0 versus C1 versus C2. What is the type of damage increase you get? C1 you get this, C2 you get this figure, 114k. And each time is 7.41%, and then from C1 to C2 is 7.93%. And obviously R5 we get a lot more damage here. At level 9 elemental skill, C2 and R5 Thundering Pulse, you can get 136k damage for full attack cycle in 3 seconds. It's not too bad, honestly speaking. It's not so bad. At level 12 elemental skill, again, this is right now all these figures are assuming that the damage bonus that you get from her elemental skill is additive. Okay, when I say additive, what happens is that I take this 67.65% to add as a damage bonus over here. I don't include the 100%. It doesn't make sense to include the 100%. That 100% obviously is like saying that it's a multiplier figure, a base multiplier figure. What I cannot tell for sure is whether or not it takes the 58.79 or the 67.65% and add it into this same damage pool, or is it a separate damage modifier that applies to everything after? If it's a separate damage modifier, it makes a lot more sense because of the way her elemental skill is described as well. If you look at cells just straight up gives you the damage bonus, i.e. Cell doesn't have this 167.65, it just gives you a 67.65 for example. But for Yoimiya it's different. Yoimiya actually shows you as 167.65%, which is why I'm inclined to think that it really is a separate damage modifier for her. Not to mention that the elemental damage, the scaling is really bad if it's additive to that same pool. So now let's talk about if it is a separate damage modifier. You'll see that the damage is instantly a lot better, right? It's 21k versus 16k at C0 with R1 Thundering Pulse. If I have C2 and R1 Thundering Pulse, I have 25k versus 19k. And then we have the best setup C2 and R5 Thundering Pulse. We have 30.5k versus 22k. This is for one hit, by the way. The first attack button where she fires 2 quick shots. You can deal this amount of damage without any elemental reactions or elemental debuff, resistance debuff, or resistance shred for that matter. At level 12 elemental skill, you get 32k and 26.4k. I know it doesn't look good, but it's really because she has so much damage modifier. That's the reason why. So if you ask me, Yoimiya does have one of the worst C3 in terms of the amount that it gives, but if you compare against the C0 and the going from C0 to C1 you get 7.41%, going from C1 to C2 you get 7.93%, going from C2 to C3 basically you get 5.58% if it is a separate damage modifier. So I think it's still pretty good, this amount of damage. But let's make more sense of it by looking at it as a full attack cycle. Now let's say you're not going for level 9, you're not going for a wheel, not C3. Even C0 and R1 Thundering Pulse, you can get 127k damage in 3 seconds. That's alright, right? That's pretty alright. That's pretty decent. I mean, it's no Hu Tao, and I'll share shortly what the damage figures for my Hu Tao look like when comparing the best setup. But I honestly don't think that Yoimiya is such a bad 5-star DPS, not to the extent of how everyone is trashing her to this extent. This type of damage figure is quite alright, and we have not included reactions. But of course, she does have her issues with reactions, which is the fact that she attacks too fast for her to reliably vaporize every hit. In fact, with Xingqiu, if you use her, it's going to be Xingqiu that's doing the vaporize instead of her. Unless you have C6 Xingqiu. C6 Xingqiu applies 5 swords at the 3rd hit. That will allow you enough the hydro gauge system, the elemental gauge, for your Yoimiya to proc the vaporize. But it's really only that. So this is really where she loses out. And of course AoE. But if you talk about her damage as a single target DPS, I think it's actually quite alright. Now let's move on to the wheel type of setup, where you have C3, level 12 elemental skill, and R5 Thundering Pulse. You do about 193k damage. 193k is not bad, right? 193k here in a full attack cycle in 3 seconds. Yeah, actually I should update this. This is just 3. Okay. It looked like it could be 2. The reason why I initially put 2 was I wanted to talk about, say, if you do some animation cancel, probably you can do some 2 seconds, but then if you do animation cancel, it wouldn't be the full 5 hit cycle, so it wouldn't apply to my figures here anyway. So 193k C3R5 in 3 seconds. She's okay. She's not really that bad. But she does have her issues. We all know. No AoE. Okay. Hu Tao can proc vaporize very reliably with Xingqiu. And let's talk about Hu Tao's damage. I also mess around a bit with my Hu Tao's damage just to do a bit of comparison. I can tell you my Hu Tao does about 47k on her charge attack, 21k on her. Okay, to be exact, it's 47.6k on her charge attack. 47.6k and 21.4k on her first hit. That's my Hu Tao. C5, R5. Okay, C5, R5 stuff at home. I'm just going to compare in terms of like the signature weapon. That's it. I'm not going to go into details of the asset type comparison or the artifact that my Hu Tao is using, etc. My Hu Tao is already using a artifact that's making the charge attack better. I'm using Bolite. So we have 47.6k plus 21.4k, which is basically 69k. You can make it such that both of these hit if you do dash cancel after each charge attack. As possible. I've been using Hu Tao to farm my 300 emblem artifacts, so I know for sure. As this is what I've been doing. So in 3 seconds for Hu Tao, you can hit almost 3 times. So we just take it as it's 69k times 3, which is already more than this. Right, it's about 407k. So you're talking about 207 versus this. And bear in mind that this has not included reactions. If you do reactions in a different story. Although I didn't do reaction on my particular comp, I'm doing Bennet plus Kazuha for maximum amplification, damage amplification. But just to show you the potential of Hu Tao, and I have not talked about Hu Tao's blood blossom that triggers every 4 seconds. I've not talked about Hu Tao's burst damage that is like a super one-time nuke. So obviously Hu Tao is better than Yoimiya. There's no question about it. But is Yoimiya bad? I wouldn't say she's bad. But if you're someone who's looking for like the very best pyro DPS, then don't pull for Yoimiya. It's as simple as that. Because she's never going to outdo Hu Tao in damage. But she offers you a different playstyle in terms of range attack. Oh, and by the way, I just want to bring up a quick point, right? The trial version Yoimiya that we have in the story quest is set up really terribly. Okay, let me just switch to that. Okay, like what is this? 4-piece Noblice. HP, she has 12k HP from her artifacts. It's a HP percentage goblet. I believe there were people who will analyze it and it's a HP percentage goblet. Who the hell uses HP percentage goblet and 4-piece Noblice set on a normal attack DPS character? You know why MiHoYo is doing this for you? Because MiHoYo wants to lower your expectation. MiHoYo wants you to think that she's not that great. And when she comes out and she's great, then people wouldn't ask for a buff. Then they can avoid the entire Zhongli debucker. Right? Alright. So anyway, that brings me to my next point, right? I've already talked about the comparison against Hu Tao. I already talked about whether her trial version. Now let's talk about the fact that she's going to be the 5-star before Belle. For what I understand, Belle is going to be the first one in first banner on 2.1. If I'm MiHoYo, I'm going to make the 5-star before Belle a very good 5-star that people will all be tempted to pull for. Why? Because people are already going to pull for Belle anyway. I mean, it just makes a lot more commercial sense, doesn't it? So by that logic, I really think that she's not that bad. Yes, she's not Hu Tao level, but at the same time, Ayaka is also not Ganyu level, right? Ayaka is also not Ganyu level. Yoimiya is not Hu Tao level. But Yoimiya is really not bad. These figures that you see here, it's okay. She's a decent pyro DPS. And playstyle wise, personally, at least for me, I think she's more fun than Yanfei. Yanfei does have her issues. Slow attack, stamina consumption. Yeah. So anyway, that's all for this video. This video still to go on longer than I wanted to, but anyway. Next video I'll talk about attack percentage goblet versus damage percentage goblet for Yoimiya. At what point is attack percent goblet better than damage percentage goblet for her? Okay, so thanks everyone for watching. I hope this video has been informative. I mean, just looking at the damage figures that she can do in one full attack cycle, I really think she's not that bad. I mean, even for a low spender at C0 and R1 Thundering Pulse, it's not so bad. I'll probably do one more video about Rust as well, so I can show you guys a proper view, like a C0 Yoimiya with a R1 Rust. What's the top damage you can expect? I still don't think she's that bad really. She's a decent DPS. Balanced DPS. I guess the right word is balanced DPS. Alright, thanks everyone for watching. I hope this has been informative enough, and I'll definitely try to do up the next video ASAP. Been really busy with in real life, so that's why last week my video upload rate was really low. Anywho, if you like the content, remember like the video and click subscribe for more, yeah? Bye!